Welcome everybody. We are doing our Acumatica, our augforums.com/live event with our reporting party. Woo! Welcome everybody. All of you attending, we have people attending on YouTube. We have people attending, I believe, on LinkedIn again this week. We're watching that, or potentially watching that. We're still trying to figure out a little bit of that LinkedIn stuff, but all fun stuff today. So please chime in with where you're from. Let us know that information. But any questions you have, throw those out there. We'll be trying to answer questions. But today I am joined by Arlene Welty. Welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Tim Rodman, of course, the main producer, the best producer in the live business. Mr. Tim Rodman. Laura, I don't see your last name, and I should do better prep.
That's fine, Ryan. Thank you for having me. It's Jaffe.
All right, Laura Jaffe. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today is our reporting party, and before we get into any of that, we have our housekeeping stuff as always. We got to keep the lights on, or keep the screens on, I guess. Keep the cameras rolling. And so, guys, of course, if you like what you're seeing here, please join us. It's augforums.com/sponsors. Take a look at our sponsors, click on their links. They love to see that. Also, if you are interested at all in the Acumatica community, check out augforums.com/Rolodex. It's a great way to kind of see all the people out in the community. And if you want people to find you, add yourself to the Rolodex. It only takes a couple seconds to do that. It's a great resource for all things people in Acumatica. And of course, lastly here, augforums.com/podcast. Our main producer, Mr. Tim Rodman, that's his long form podcast. They go into some deep dives on some areas. And so check out that for additional content. So there we go. And I think we even have a party video. So can we play our, sorry. Thank you. Our Acumatica tips and tricks. If you are out there in any of the communities, and that's LinkedIn or the community.acumatica.com or augforums.com, and you see something that is a tip and trick, hashtag that with AcumaticaTnT, and that's a tip and trick that'll blow your mind. You get a TNT at the end. So it's our cool little, it's our hashtag, along of course with GI Joe and GI Jane. Which is our generic inquiry hashtags that we're promoting out there. But tag that stuff. We normally have a segment all for all the TNTs that we've seen for the week, but a lot of today is going to be a bunch of Acumatica TNT things. So we'll go ahead and get right into the meat of things, and to kind of get the party vibe going, I think we have a short video here. Tim, if you want to kind of throw up that video for us, and we'll all get our dance on for a second. And we do encourage all of those listening and watching to join us in about 15 to 20 second dance party to kind of get things going. If you are watching the recording, feel free to dance in your seat. If you're watching with your kids or something, grab your kids, dance around to kind of start off with our dance party. So okay, Tim, I'll flip it over. Ready?
Let's get started.
Everyone looks so good. Everyone's moved. Everyone just writing those inquiries.
All right, guys. Whew, now we got that done. Energized now, man. I'm good for a while. All right. Well, thank you guys all for joining us. We should have a fun time today. So, starting off, we'll kind of throw it around here, and we'll kind of ask everyone, kind of, what's your story, your background, your reporting story? How did you get into your love of reporting? And we'll kind of throw around. Why not go alphabetically? Arlene, why don't you start us off?
Sure. Okay. So I was thinking about this story recently because I realized when I wanted to make the transition to consulting, I was an end user and I wanted to make a transition to consulting. And I thought immediately that I could do whatever came at me. but I quickly learned that I did not know how to do everything that came at me. And I realized that if I could learn one specific thing, that I could be more and more skilled and helpful to my business partner. And I thought, well, I'll just learn SQL. So I was on a beach vacation with a SQL textbook, like teach yourself SQL as a beginner. And I was just paging through this, never had Open Management Studio, but I was on the beach reading these textbooks and realizing, I'm starting to understand structure. And then I started reading beginner database building books, and I started building a database of all the food I was going to buy, and I would try to match it up with all the meals I wanted to make. And so I would, try to understand it fundamentally. And that gave me a deep and abiding love of SQL, so that once I started writing my first select statement, I still remember how good it felt. But that has gotten me to the point where in our company at DataQuest, I'm sort of the person that people go to now when there's a SQL problem or an element that can't be resolved. So for me, it all came from there, and realizing that could translate to so many other reporting tools and even to inquiries, understanding that you can, there's a specific way to join a header to a detail and then do that across tables, for example. Reading SQL on the beach as a younger consultant translated to me being able to say, oh, I know conceptually how I would build this as an inquiry, and just really helped me build my confidence. So for me, it all came from reading SQL books and reading database books and realizing okay, this is a niche area that's very interesting, and it made something basic data just seem really rich and exciting. And I realized you can go anywhere with this.
Nice. Laura, how about you?
Yeah, so my background and my degree is actually in computer science. And when I first started out my career, I was the database developer for, I don't know, you guys aren't from Cleveland, but it's called the Cleveland Advanced Manufacturing Program. We used to call it CAMP, and we actually had these really cool T-shirts. There was these ants on the shirt, but now they changed their name and they're called Magnets, so they had to change the picture. But in any event,
so good.
Yeah, so I was the database developer, and I really loved working with SQL. Then I went off. Started my own company, did a freelance thing for a while. And I actually worked a lot with Microsoft Access, and, it's kind of denigrated, and you guys are probably gonna snigger, but it's actually a really great low code environment. It's really good, I think, for rapid development. I built some really, really cool projects with that. One I really liked was this whole lab management system for our local water treatment plant, and they've been using that for 20 years now. I think they're looking to replace it finally. But, I think that no matter what the tool is, whether it's Microsoft Access or SQL or generic inquiries, that what I really learned over the years is that what really matters, I think it was even on the podcast a couple podcasts ago when you had Yuri on, and he was talking about how at first everyone's putting their data in and they're all excited about saving all those attributes. And then later on, when you get farther along, it's more about getting the data out. And so you have to kind of know what the end product is going to be, which is basically the report, in order to know what to put in. So I really think that the data really, really drives everything in reporting. And so I kind of brought that experience and my, passion for data to my role at Parallel Solutions. And I wear a lot of hats here, but one that I really enjoy the most is solving reporting challenges. So that's
nice. I guess alphabetically I go before Tim. I've kind of mastered the kindergarten alphabet here. So for me, it's funny. Very similar early experience as Laura, as far as getting into Access as my first database. And actually, at first was using Access as the database engine as well, and then we swapped it out where SQL was the database engine, which you can link to pretty easily from Access. And we used Access for the rapid building of forms and any of the potential there. And unfortunately, got way into VBA, which is just, no one should have to go through that. It's crazy. Although I have one of my developers doing VBA right now, but I don't have to do it. So if your choice, don't have yourself do VBA.
Right.
Tim, how about you? Where'd you get started?
So I started getting into SQL back in college. I worked on an open source project where it was like a PHP, Linux, MySQL project. And that's where I first saw databases. But then it wasn't until, around 2011 when I actually started working at a company right down the road from Laura in Solon, Ohio, off Cochrane Road. And I was living in Cleveland for a few years, worked at that company. And that's where I'd say the light bulb kind of went off for me, where you had the implementation where you're mostly focused on process. But I found that reporting, it's like a coin. Process is one side of the coin, reporting is the other side of the coin. And the process affects the reporting. The reporting, in my opinion, should come before the process a lot of times. Make sure you know what you're going to get out of it before you design a process. And what I noticed with reporting is there's an ongoing nature of it. The more you feed the beast, the more the appetite is there. And I like that ongoing nature of it instead of just implementation. And that's where I think the light bulb went on for me, that maybe there's a way to just focus on reporting, which is what I'm trying to do now.
Can I just make a comment that I like what you're saying about how it's iterative? And Laura, like what you're saying, people are so excited about putting data in, especially in an early implementation. And sometimes they don't exactly know what they want the reporting to look like until, I mean, honestly, like weeks later, they'll be like, oh, what's all the, I don't know, sales opportunity data look like as a manager? Like, you know, as a good consultant, you want to be asking that first, but sometimes I feel like it is more organic or natural where people realize, oh, you know, I want to see the data structured in a different way. And yeah, Tim, that's like what makes our jobs interesting is, you know, you're responding to the fact that we're all humans and not robots. Like you can't exactly always know exactly what's going to be on the report the first time and then it's static forever. It's much more alive.
All right, so I want to do kind of as we get into, I want to kind of do a poll to the audience here, and we'll chat about this for a second. The Acumatica, they have a finite number of developers. So do we want Acumatica to be focused on adding in reporting functionality into the software? Or is this something where we'd rather have them promote their ISVs? And there's always that balancing act. Like, okay, like everyone loves these like Velixo type things, but do you want Velixo actually in Acumatica as opposed to kind of having it in Excel or having some of that? Because we have seen more emphasis on doing things like pivot tables within Acumatica, and they've enhanced those. And Tim even did something where he talked about, I think this was the last summit or one of his podcasts. He talked about there's a feature for doing distinct count that is in Acumatica, but it's not in Excel. So it's an advancement they have over what you can do in normal Excel. So where I see Doug chiming in here, he wants things in Acumatica. We'll kind of start with Laura here. Laura, what do you think? Where do you want the focus of Acumatica? And hopefully the other Doug from Acumatica is watching this and kind of can get some feedback here. Laura, what do you think?
Yeah, hey, you know, I think my vote would be to put the functionality in Acumatica. I think that by having the core tools inside of Acumatica, you know, they're not necessarily building every report for you. So there's never going to be a software package that's going to meet everybody's requirements. I think the partner's role is to take those tools and build the reports that the customer needs. But you know, to your point about Velixo, I don't know if that needs to be part of the core functionality, but the enhancements I'd like to see in Acumatica are more related to just building building that generic inquiry functionality a little bit more. Some of the things that are on my list, I'd like to be able to do subqueries. I'd like to be able to do unions. I'd like to be able to do some kind of filtering on the in SQL, you'd call it like the aggregated data. Like you can do some of that now with filters, but I think if they could enhance that core functionality in the product, it would give us a lot of tools then, and the VARs as well, maybe tools to build things outside of that. The specific.
Yeah, Acumatica, if you're listening, a having clause and a union clause would go a long way to opening up potential.
Mm-hmm.
So, Arlene, what are you thinking? Enhance it, or
nailed it. I think Laura nailed it. Definitely, everything they've done to make inquiries easier to build, even the predictive joins, those are very helpful and have saved a lot of time. But I want them to be so much easier. I agree. Go ahead.
I'll throw out someone for devil's advocate, because like the ARM reporting,
the devil's in the party.
There's ARM reporting, which is what it is.
Yeah.
Within Acumatica, or would you rather have them enhance that, or be like, you know what, we give in to Velixo or any of their competitors, and we're gonna put more effort really enhancing the GIs.
If Acumatica came to me and like I was queen and made that choice, I would say, yeah, make the inquiries better. That's honestly, the ARMs, those are, in my view, in my experience, are a little more static. Like once you go through the pain of building those, they don't really change. But inquiries, you could be building new ones every week for the same customer. So yes, in terms of long-term flexibility, if I was anointed with that choice, I would definitely say make the inquiries easier for us to use, and like anything to mimic, I don't know, like the freedom that you feel when you're just like writing in SQL and all the data is in front of you and you can just immediately see results. That is the freedom that is, I think, sort of constrained when you're writing inquiries. So the closer they can get to that, the better, in my view.
Okay, so on those same notes, though, I'll throw this one out there as a kind of like a follow-up question before we get into some of the audience questions here. A philosophical question: do you add SQL to DAX so that you can access it with the GI? We all said, hey, we love SQL, and it's funny. We really should record some of our pre-show sessions and stuff. I always mention them during our live broadcasts, and someone will always chime in, why don't you record those? They're always so great. Good point, people. But we're talking, Acumatica makes it really easy to add anything from SQL into a DAC. You put the name of the view or the custom table you have, click a button saying build from SQL, say okay, and to kind of quote a commercial right now, Scoop, there it is, or Whoop, there it is. Best commercial out there, by the way. If you've not seen it, Google Scoop, there it is. Great commercial. But should we be linking in SQL to Acumatica, or does it really kind of fundamentally shift away from what Acumatica is trying to get us to do, is to using their objects?
Can I pounce on this one?
Sure.
Okay. 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 I think this is a risk, but it's not because I am an expert and can see into the future of Acumatica. It's more like a philosophical concern that when we write a SQL view, because it's easier for folks who have such facility with SQL, and we add it to Acumatica, in a sense, I am concerned that that's sort of doing something outside of the system, or doing something that feels almost custom, even though in other systems it wouldn't feel at all custom to write a SQL view. It would feel like daily life. But my view is that in Acumatica, yes, Ryan, you say it, they make it easy, but I don't know that that's right. And I think, or I'm concerned that if I write, what if, to take it to the extreme, what if everything I did as an inquiry, I just always wrote it in SQL first and loaded it in, loaded it in. And then in 5 years, who knows what Acumatica will change. I worry that it'll be harder for me to access those, or they won't upgrade properly, or that I'm sort of doing something outside of the system that instead I should, I don't know, go through the pain and like the sweat to do it properly within the system. Because for me, that feels like, okay, you built it in the system, it's integrated in the system, it'll upgrade with the system. Where writing your own SQL, I don't have the same confidence, but I don't know that it will always be, you know, a stable element of the system. So that's my concern.
Laura, how about you? Where are you on this one?
Oh, your audio.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Arlene.
Sure.
New to this thing. I would have to agree with you really on just about everything you said. In addition to your concern about upgrading, I also think that you might lose quite a bit on the built-in functionality that's within Acumatica. So we were talking a little bit before the show, and I'm not need to verify this, but I think that the security row level security probably is not going to be respected if you're writing your own view. Things like the relationships between the tables that you kind of get for free in a generic inquiry. So you're going to show the, the ID field, and it's going to display the natural key for you. If you want to do that in your own view, you're going to have to find the table and join to it, which you can do. That being said, we have created views. There just are things that you can't do. We need that union and that subquery functionality. So it's a fact that right now we are doing that, but my goal is always to try to look first and see if there's a way to do it within the software, and then only go that route kind of as a last resort.
Yeah, it's interesting. We found is if you do limit yourself to trying to do it in in GIs, generic inquiries, then you do push yourself for innovation. There's a post that that Gabriel from Elixo did, and this honestly is not a plug for Elixo. I mention them a lot, but he wrote a way to, if you want to find, let's say, I'll give you an easy example. Like you're on a sales order and you want to find the inventory ID for the item that has the highest cost. Then it's easy to do a max on that cost and find the highest cost. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's a max. But how do you find the inventory ID for that? And so that gets into some complications. Yeah. And so I guess he pushed himself to figure it out. And with a series of joins, can use projections instead of SQL views.
Sorry, I'm just highlighting all the comments that people make today, so you don't have to. I'm not trying to derail you.
No, they're like part of the party.
Yeah, but he pressed himself to do it, and so he found a solution where if you weren't trying to do that, you may think to yourself, oh, I'll just do some sort of I can do it in SQL. I can do some queries and find the answer. But he challenged himself and he did it within the system. And so I think part of the fun, I guess, the part of the party, is to challenge yourself to push it in the system, but just to fall back on some stuff, because there is some stuff that can only be done through SQL, and so that we are glad that Acumatica did make it really easy.
So Ryan, you made this comment that they make it easy to do, so therefore it's not a risk, or therefore like it, I don't know, can and should be done.
Or they're blessing it. Not necessarily that it can, but the Acumatica is saying, hey, look,
like it's legal.
We want to allow it to happen. So it's like if you go on a highway and it's like, oh, speed limit 75. Okay, well they said it's 75, so I can go that way, whether or not it's safe or not. If you have a broken down car, you probably don't want to do that. But someone's saying it's safe to do that. So
interesting.
Yeah, and we're different because we use the on-prem version. So I think a general thought is the on-prem, you do have a little bit less fear of some stuff because you do have more control of that SQL database, and you have other ways to access it. So we get a little spoiled there. Tony did throw something out there that's kind of relevant to this conversation. can you use projections instead of SQL views? I am not up on my projections, so
I
does
think
anyone else want to chime in? And maybe someone in the audience knows more, or Tim or Laura,
I think
Arlene.
Tony's talking about, like, if you're gonna get down, Tony's a developer, and if you write like C# code, you can do, instead of writing SQL, you write it in C# code.
Okay.
Which is even more involved. But you totally could.
But maybe less risky though, because if you're using their BQL to write that, you're basically using their object still. And Tony, you may have to chime in here. Can you do things like a union clause or something like that, or a having clause in their BQL? And maybe anyone on the panel may know this answer. Yeah, the BQL not necessarily 100% user friendly.
Haven't done it.
Okay. Yeah, we've done BQL, definitely not user friendly. I don't know about unions. We haven't gotten into that. So Tony's saying yes, you can do unions. So yeah, that would definitely be a way of kind of marrying the two. Then is being able to do projections where you can use their objects and do your having clauses or do your unions. So it's some homework. We all can look up projections now, or get her like we talked about having I have my developer do VBA. So have your developers do some projections to expose SQL-like functionality.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea, like that you'd be using. It's like you're sort of getting everything you want there, where you're getting sort of the flexibility to write it yourself, but the stability that it's essentially sort of part of the product, rather than feeling like you're writing it outside of the product.
Yeah.
Did you guys have a chance to look at the recording I sent you where Mike C is talking about future stuff?
Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
No.
Well, I think it's relevant to this chat here. Let me, I know I said I wasn't going to share my screen, but I'm going to share this slide. It's actually a screen clip I just did of the YouTube video.
Okay.
So I'm highlighting two things here. So this is Mike C, CTO at Acumatica, in a presentation a couple months ago, talking about what they're working on next. Two things. You can see the two red arrows. The first one on the left is highlighting that they want to put the report designer program on top of generic inquiries, which is interesting. And then the one that's more relevant to what we're talking about here is the arrow on the right, where they want to decouple data queries. And I think that just means separate them. Arlene, you probably like that word, decoupling. And,
of course I would.
So that you'd be able to actually write subqueries, and I don't know if you'll be able to do unions, et cetera, but basically making the query engine a lot more advanced by decoupling them from the presentation layer. So two interesting things. I don't know when they're coming, but they're on the radar.
Tim, I don't actually know what they mean by that though. Like, if decoupling from the presentation makes it seem like it's like in another application, what do they mean?
If you see the next
I don't know
bullet,
either.
The next bullet talks about moving reporting to be on top of generic inquiries. So those are probably tied to each other somehow, where they'll have the data layer and then they'll have the actual presentation of that data, which are going to be separate somehow.
So I think if you think about, like in SQL, once you create a view, then that view is first class table almost that you can use in another query. That's how I'm interpreting this, that would be a way to create your generic inquiry, and then you could, or the view beneath it, and then in your generic inquiry, when you're choosing your data access classes, maybe there'd be another tab that would say GIs, and you could add the GI as a table in your generic inquiry, and that would, in addition to giving you things like subqueries, it would also make it so you could reuse things more, maybe. So you could have kind of like we often in the SQL world, we would create a view and then use it over and over again as the basis for all kinds of different reports or things. So you would have sort of a reusable component that you could then put in a report or put in a GI or use it on a dashboard or whatever. That's how I interpret it.
Django has a comment on the screen right now that makes sense too. Like you're summarizing something somewhere and then pulling it in another spot.
If anyone is and we're talking about reporting and stuff, and I'll plug one of our past live events we just did. For any of those reporting people who want to get into some of the Excel reporting stuff, take a look at the one we did 2 weeks ago on Power BI, and in leveraging kind of the power of Excel that you already have. Amazing stuff. So like projections this week is something that I can take away personally and use at Xbyte as something that we can start to look at, kind of bridging that gap between SQL and Acumatica. I learned so much last week on what is capable as far as with Excel, and Tim, we've already leveraged it with a new tool for us doing quoting and stuff. So you've been a big help. You've saved us some hours of work from just being talking with us last week. So thank you for all that great information. All right, so getting into a couple, someone had a question here, and I want to get into some of the questions from the audience, and then we can get into some other things as well. But there's a question about the visible expression, and it sounds like I forget who mentioned that, but they were talking about a visible expression, and I think it was FOB points. Tim, if you can scroll back and find that, and how the box, I believe, is either hidden or not hidden either way.
Michael Triffon.
Actually, Ryan, before we go there, did you want to do Laura's example, pulling us back out of the SQL weeds and doing something in the core tools?
Well, this is on
this one first. Let's see, where was it? It was near the beginning, right? Was that the first one?
Yeah, mine shows at 11:08 a.m. Central. Yeah, that's it.
All right.
Check and then the comment right below that, Tim, is he's got a little more detail on his FOB point.
There we go. Sorry, go ahead.
All right, so I don't know if anyone on the panel here or in the audience has the exact answer, but I want to just. Oh, Laura has it. I want to throw it out there. Even if we don't have the exact answer, but just a discussion on troubleshooting this. I guess Laura's been working on this since
Laura's got it.
The last
Everyone
20 minutes.
can just stop their cameras.
We're talking about the visibility function.
Yeah.
I can take that if you want. First time I saw it, but I can handle it. Sure.
Okay, go jump on that one, Laura.
Yeah. So I think that would work just like any other function in the report. We're talking about here the report designer, I'm assuming, because I don't think you can do that conditionally in a generic inquiry. So I don't know if Michael
assuming visible expression from report.
Yeah, so report designer. So I don't see why that wouldn't work. There's another box underneath that function or above or below it, I think, that has the default value. So you might want to check the default and make sure that the default is set to true, probably, and then it should get hidden if your expression returns true. Is that right, Tim? You agree? You're smart.
My guess on this one is that it might be comparing origin to the integer value of FOB point ID rather than the CD
so
value.
It might not be able to match it.
That's my guess.
Point.
I don't know. Yeah.
That's a good one too. Yeah, you're right.
And we were talking before, should we pull up our screens and try to make it work? And we realized we're already half an hour in now, and we've got half an hour left. We just wouldn't be able to do that. So one comment I want to make is we want to do some follow-up forum posts. So if you want to go post stuff over on the forums, just you can either leave a comment in the chat here, or after this broadcast is done, it automatically turns into the recording. So the same URL you're watching on YouTube, it's the same URL for the recording. And you can then leave a comment on the video, like a regular YouTube video, and just drop links to forum discussions that are addressing the things that you're asking here. And that'll give me a way to then queue it up on the broadcast page that I create afterwards, so people can go continue the discussion over in the forums.
So on a higher level of this, if someone wanted to troubleshoot this, how would they start troubleshooting this?
So
just to see why it's not working.
What I would do, and that's a great point you raised, Tim, that probably is the issue, is that that might be an integer, is I would take that expression and I would create a new text field on the report and just drop that expression in there and show it. And then I could see if it says true for every or false for every value, then I found my problem.
And you could do that. You could also, I've done things where I'll put both sides of there, or really only one side, put the origin ID as a field, And so you can see that. And to check for spacing, you can always put like a 1 or a tilde or something before it and after it. So that way you'll see exactly what the results are in case there are things like spaces. You'd always try and trim it as well.
Right.
You want to get rid of the potential of spaces.
That's one of the things that I have found to be a little tricky in Acumatica is when you're at Michael's level where you're like, okay, I need this to be equal to this, and not totally being able to see transparently what the value actually is, whether Acumatica is going to present what's in the presentation layer, or if Acumatica is going to present an integer value that represents the ID in the database. I find that difficult, where in SQL you could just query it, but in the inquiries you really have to be like, okay, because Acumatica does this sort of translation when you view your results sometimes, and it can be perplexing when you're expecting a string and you get an integer, or you find that things don't match. I mean, obviously there are ways to solve this, but you've got to make a new field and do a little magic to try to show exactly the value of that field in order to then write your expression around it.
And you can also always run the request profiler if you want to see the SQL behind the scenes to see which value it is actually checking, to see if it is checking the code or the ID, and that can also help you troubleshoot by understanding what they're trying to do.
Another thing I'll do is I'll throw an expression around it. I think it's CSTR for convert to string.
Yes.
You just wrap it in that. It hasn't always done this, but it'll usually take it and then show what it really is in the database and not the presentation stuff that it's doing.
Yeah, that's what I meant by making, you have to basically add another field to your results grid and do that CSTR formula to see it. But yeah.
All right, so Michael, we've thrown out a lot out there, and I don't know what it looks like you've tried a bunch of this stuff. If you can take a listen to all of the suggestions we had there. If they still did not work, hop on to the augforums.com community and throw out the question and kind of give us the things that you've tried, and we'll all try and chime in and help you out on that community. All right. Now, Laura, I know you had a question. You had an inquiry that you were looking for, and there's a little general discussion about that as well. So why don't you tee that one up for us?
Sure. Yeah. So we had a situation where in a manufacturing environment, we had bill of materials, and there's all kinds of cost transactions flowing onto that bill of materials. And real important to the customer that the first step, the first operation, not be skipped. Sometimes the shop floor guys get ahead of themselves. They'd start putting labor on that production ticket before the let's call it 0010 operation, the inspection step, had been completed. So our challenge was to find any production tickets that had at least one labor transaction on them, but didn't have any transactions of any type on that 0010 operation code. And so, in SQL, you kind of could write that either with a common table expression or a subquery with a left join and find that. We did get this working in a generic inquiry. It was a little bit of a tricky challenge. I'm going to write it up in a blog post. But one of the couple lessons that we learned along there has to do with the point that Tim made a few minutes ago on those integer versus the natural key for a field. So we found out in our main query, we start out by looking for all the cost transactions where the operation code was not 0010, and we put that expression in and popped right up. Acumatica did the translation and that worked just fine. Well, we found out that when we created our join, our outer join to look for the missing transactions, and we put that same 0010 in the relation, suddenly Acumatica doesn't know what 0010 is anymore, and we started getting a totally different operation because it's interpreting 0010 as well, we don't have the operation code there. Now all we have is the operation ID. It turns out it's not a one-to-one mapping. You can have you really don't know what the operation ID is going to be. So you have to join in another table to look up the operation code and pull that in. And
how hard was it to find that other table? This is like a linking table?
It's not a linking table. It's the operations table on the production order. So yeah, we were able to find it easily. We already knew what the table was.
Okay.
Kind of messed up our join though, because now we have this extra table, and so we ended up having to select all the records, aggregate it, and then do the final filtering on the results instead of being able to do the filter inside of the join.
Gotcha.
Because so that makes
you
sense.
said you wrote this up in a blog post, right? That you're working on it?
Yeah, I'm going to get that. I'll try to get that to you later today, and we can put it on the site for this broadcast.
What I'll do is so at augforums.com/live, you have the upcoming broadcasts. And once I move today's to the past broadcasts, you can actually just look at the first one, the past one right now, and you'll see there's a related link section on the bottom. And that's where I'm going to throw that blog post and any forum discussions that you leave as a comment. That way you can go jump over and continue the discussion or check out Laura's blog post.
That's something that just popped up to me as an interesting play on this, is leveraging in business events, where if the end result is to get alerted on something, you can do a business event and group it by that one field. So instead of aggregating the data, do a business event, group it, say, hey, send me once for each of those, and have it send an alert to the production manager, hey, this just happened, and have it run on a timed basis. So every 15 minutes it checks for any of those instances and sends them an email, and that way it'll get you out of having to do the aggregation and possible SQL penalties for that.
That's a great idea.
I've got a story on that. So I when I was working at that when I was working at that manufacturing company in Solon, Ohio, I did that, and except I just did it with SQL, and I had over 200 alerts running that would send emails out every night, that stuff that shouldn't be happening, and eventually it just goes to people's spam folder, in my experience. So the technique I like using now is what I call the stuff that should never happen dashboard. And you just make a dashboard that's all simple KPI widgets, and they're either red or they're green. And then you have a quick way to look at everything that shouldn't be happening and just see if it's red or green. Then you can click in and address it. And I think Laura's, so not saying the business events wouldn't work. That's my experience. I just kept chasing it. 200. I just stopped eventually. But I like Laura's technique because you're finding stuff that should never happen. And that's a key piece of reporting, except people go through all this manual work to find it, rather than having a simple way to present it. And I think the dashboard idea really needs a clean generic inquiry. And you found a way to do this technique in a generic inquiry without SQL. And I like that. That's really cool.
It also gets to like a philosophical element of what we're doing, which is, the alerts versus a dashboard. But all that really depends on your users. Some people, we will sometimes present like, we can just aggregate all this. Like, I like your concept, the stuff that should never happen dashboard, and I think you've written about it before. I really love that. And I've also found some clients will just be like, no, like I want it in my email, and they've got like tens of thousands of emails. But for them, it's a hard philosophical switch for them to sort through a dashboard where they feel like the email just tells me one thing at a time. Not that you can make more complex emails, especially with Acumatica, but it really depends on your end user and what they want. And we cannot get everyone to switch to a dashboard.
And I guess with email too,
simpler.
They've got like an archive of it. They have proof that happened. Whereas a dashboard, it might change 5 minutes from now. I totally agree.
Plus, I think maybe it depends on the time sensitivity of the matter. If you're going to be sending out an order and something's wrong on the customer setup, you probably want to know that sooner rather than later. If it's something that, you just invoice once a day, it's okay to, check the dashboard every morning, then that maybe is insufficient.
And you can even do mobile alerts. So with business events, you can always tie it into mobile alerts if someone's not, because there are those people who are not tied to email. There's like 3 or 4 that exist out there.
Yeah, Tim and I are 2 of them.
So we had two of the four on the panel today, but for those people, mobile alerts can also work great to kind of someone's out in production and needs gets alerted. All the warehouse people have, not my experience, they all have their phones on them.
Yeah.
Whether or not they should be looking at them while a forklift's impaling them is a different question. But yeah, all different possibilities for reporting and kind of bridging, as we said, where are the client needs can be delivered. Yeah. Tim, you had something from David Hunter on the forums. Maybe you can tee that one up for us.
Okay, let's see.
Surprise.
I'm trying to think how to condense it. I can't throw it up on the screen easily here. I think I'll present it this way. So David had a question that he emailed in ahead of time, and it was talking about project balances and a profit and loss statement. And I think we were we were exchanging emails about this beforehand, and we realized, we can't just do our original title for this, which we kept, was "Bring Your Questions and Try to Stump the Panel." But we realized
we're unstumpable.
Well, we just don't have enough time, and maybe we're unstumpable. But so for David's, I think my response to David's would be a few things. I won't even get into the details of the question, but one is that whenever I see the phrase profit and loss, when you're trying to do a profit and loss report, I would lean towards doing ARM or Velixo, the ARM Financial Report Writer or Velixo, because I just find the nature of financial statements is row by row independent calculations. But, as actually David also pointed out here, that he got one answer from Acumatica, he got one answer from a support company. One wanted to use Report Designer, one wanted to use ARM. And I think the other point there is actually to Arlene's point that she made earlier. It really depends on the user or the audience, right? And there's just no right answer for a lot of reporting things. So which tool should you use for this report? I don't know, and I don't know that we have time to get into it. But I think it's an interesting reporting point that I try to do, which is deliver something as quickly as possible, even though it's not complete. And that way you get a feel for, does it feel like we're using the right tool for this situation? Maybe you only do, the first 5 lines of the profit and loss, and you try it in ARM. And if it's not feeling right, then you try it in another tool. And before you try to flesh it out and dot all the I's and cross all the T's, you make sure that you're going in the right direction with the right tool. So just another general thing on your question there, David, my response on that. And I don't know that we have time for any of the rest of it.
Yeah, I'll throw a general question to the audience, kind of on the same token of we talk about finding missing data. So let's say that there's a series of steps that that particular production order has to go through, and you want to get a listing of all your production orders, and did they go through each of the steps that they're supposed to go through? And so you're not necessarily looking for only positives, but you want the positives and the negatives, because you want to see, okay, hey, my production order has to go through these 10 steps. Which ones were missing? And it's easy to find which ones happened, but how would you find which ones were missing from that?
Left out or joined?
Yeah, I was going to say that. So you're going to have on your production order there would be a table, AM prod operations, I think.
But would
and then you're
going
to look for transactions against it. So.
But would you have negatives though?
You would be a row there before you enter any transactions. There's still a row, I believe, for each operation, and then the cost transactions would be against that. So you would do a left, do a left join, just like.
So maybe that example is terrible. We don't do manufacturing, so I don't know.
I think we could do it.
That table doesn't exist.
I'll put it in my blog.
But in general, the negatives are hard to. I mean, unless of course the production orders it already has it, and you don't have to worry about that. But this brings up a join that a lot of people don't know about, and cross joins. For the longest time, I'd seen that on join types, and I never had any idea what it was. And for for those who don't know, it basically finds all the possibilities of both tables. So
yes, but it has a performance consequence.
Okay, give us the. I've used it to. I had an example where I wanted to find all the possible combinations for automation steps, because I wanted to see all the possible fields that were affected by automation steps, in which steps actually had those fields listed. Because if you attended our workflow engine, we all realize how terrible automation steps are, and there's I think 85 for sales orders, and you can easily miss one for field visibility or something. So I was able to do that at that scale, and that was much smaller. There's probably only 1,000 records. I didn't see any penalty on that one. What have you seen as far as SQL, as far as the performance penalty on cross joins?
Well, there is a penalty because it just by default has to, it has to return everything. You're just telling it to return everything, and you're not limiting it at all. But I have only done it rarely in what I would consider like extreme distress. If that's the only way to get the data. But yes, I think if you're looking at 1,000 rows or fewer, you're certainly limiting the penalty. I have done it on a table that's like a is everything okay to proceed table that has 1 or 2 rows that always checks, can everything happen in this other table? Yes, but only if the okay to proceed table is like at green light. And then it's fine because there's no real relationship between these two things, right? It's just like this stuff can be read as long as this table has a green light. But the thing that you're cross-joining to only has a couple rows, okay, not such a big risk. But it's I've seen people do it just lazily because like, oh well, I'll get everything, but it's a risky thing to do unless you really are familiar with what's going to happen.
Okay.
So another point on that, Ryan, on the left join or the cross join that I found is you have to be careful, because if you put your conditions, if you're only looking for missing rows of a particular type, like say I only want to see the customers that don't have an open opportunity, right? So if I put that open on the conditions tab, and then I look for all of the customers that don't have anything, it's going to filter out the rows that I'm looking for, which are the ones that don't have anything in that field, in that status field, because when you do the left join, you're going to get nothing for the rows that don't have a match, and it also won't match the specifics that you're looking for. So the trick is to put that criteria in the relation itself. You can add additional fields that aren't related to your links between the two tables. You can add any field in that join, and then your left join will incorporate the criteria, and then you can just look for the missing records on the conditions tab. That makes sense?
And this right here is the key technique that you're going to write up in that blog
That's
post,
what
right?
I'm going to write up.
This is the whole, and what's
That's
cool
the
about
whole-
it is
yeah.
you can apply it to so many different situations.
Mm-hmm.
And that blog post on is putting in conditions in the relationships tab.
Yeah, that's really the trick to finding missing data that's qualified more than just there aren't any operations. Well, I know there's some operations, because that's what I'm looking for, is things that already started but skipped that particular step. So I have to make sure that in my relation, I'm putting that condition in the relation and not on the conditions tab. It's the same in SQL. It's similar. If you did your left join in SQL, you'd have to put your condition in the left join. If you put it in the where clause, that's really what Acumatica does. It just takes your graphical query and translates it into SQL, and you can look at it in the trace and see what it's doing, which I sometimes find really helpful. Yeah. So use the relations tab. It's great.
Yeah,
cool.
We've done something similar to hide some data, where in our relation tab, we had one of the parameters, And so if we wanted to, it was for us, it was performance reasons. If we didn't want to join all that data and come back with it, then we would just uncheck that parameter, and therefore it would not do the join, and it would save us that performance. So we try and not do a bunch of GIs, because then we have people using different ones, and then with all of our side panels and stuff like that, people start asking, oh, hey, why is this field not here? And it's here, and add this side panel here. So we've tried to kind of condense that, but in doing so, we had to be careful, because there's still some reporting needs off some stuff. So we had to give some options to turn off certain things.
You know, Laura, quick comment, your blog post reminded me that, Ryan, I don't think we've mentioned on this show that Laura is really the one who started the hashtag AcumaticaTnT with her post on LinkedIn.
Oh, this is that Laura?
This is that Laura. I didn't know you didn't realize that. So anyways, we're about to get number 2, the second one from Laura.
But I'm not responsible for the graphic. That's all you.
Yeah, you're gladly not responsible.
that dynamite, I mean, it took a graphic designer at least a minute to search through.
That image cost me $1, by the way.
It's awesome. Little scary, but awesome.
No, that's perfect though. A tip and trick should always be just a little scary.
They really should add that to Summit as like a TNT award. The Acumatica TNT award is for like the tip and trick of the year, for those for all those on the different communities helping out.
Well, we should award it to Laura for this chat.
There we go.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. You're too kind.
All right, Michael has one question, and then I want to give it to our panel here to kind of another surprise. To kind of each of you guys tell us how we can find you if we have questions, and then also to kind of leave us with your own tip of the day. Michael threw out here, what's the best way to convert a 4-decimal number into an integer? I need to eliminate decimal place.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, go ahead, Arlene.
Oh, could you just have it show up as another field that is an integer when you're building the inquiry?
Well, I think he's in report designer world today, is my guess.
Oh.
Is that right, Michael?
Oh, okay.
I think maybe the schema's the trick, to pick a field that matches the formatting you're looking for. I've found sometimes works well.
Does reporting have a schema?
But in the format field, right? Not in the formula.
In the
field.
format field. Yeah.
I agree. I think that's what you're missing. And that's one thing I don't like about report designers, that now you have a whole formatting layer that takes, in my experience, like 80% of the time. You know, you get the data right 20% of the time, and then you spend 80% on formatting. And I agree. I think if you find a field that has the format you're looking for, you drop it in the format field. There's also a bunch of format codes. And if you look in the S130 course on Acumatica University, there's a bunch of formatting codes you can use that'll allow you to fine tune it if you don't find an existing field.
Yeah, the number one should, the number formats should allow you to take off that data. And if all else fails, you can always just round and then convert to string and replace .00000 with empty. That's kind of like a cheating way to do it.
You're good.
That's
you're
pretty.
Really banging, you're really banging your head. I'm like, I just give up. Like, nothing's working.
I'm just pouring my beer on your head.
Way to kill the party.
Did Michael do my idea about the string? I think he did. I think I heard that's what I did.
Well, bye, everybody.
Or you can try picking a format that works. One of the two. All right. So who wants to? Tim, because you're a constant on here, we'll call you out first and kind of let you do. How can people find you? And if you have a last minute tip you want to share with everybody.
Yeah, I think especially for today's, I would just say leave a comment on the YouTube video. That's not me trying to drive comments on the YouTube, but it's more. I'm wondering if that might be a good way to kind of continue the conversation. Drop those links to other discussions, either ones you create on community.acumatica.com or on augforums.com, as a way to kind of continue this broadcast conversation, because we know that there's just no way we could realistically, get into the weeds on a lot of these today. And I can respond to stuff there. I think that's the best way to contact me.
All right, Laura, how can people find you, and do you have any tips you want to leave with everybody?
Yeah, you can email me at lauraj@erpsolutionsforyou.com. And the final tip, I guess I would just say, there's a lot of little hidden fields in the generic inquiry editor where it looks like you just have to pick from a drop down, but in fact, you can type a formula in there. Planning to write a post and call some of those out, but there's some special functionality there, so look for it.
Laura, with the good ideas today. I love it.
All right, Arlene, what do you got for us?
Okay, so one way to find us is on Twitter at DataQuestHello. And my tip is to use the forums, the AUG forums and the Acumatica community. I just had a breakthrough, thanks to other people, on getting an OData connection, so I wanted to pull in an inquiry into an existing Power BI dashboard, and the Acumatica people helped me, including Tim. Thank you.
I like your word breakthrough. We've turned this party into like a support group.
Yes.
Like, hi, my name is Tim, and I'm addicted to generic inquiries. So that's how all parties turn out, anyways, right?
All right. Well, thank you guys very much. If anyone needs me, it's the hardest name in show business, Ryan.Brown. I'm at xbyte.com. You always can find me. And my last tip is something I'm just starting to to potentially make use of. And I think it's going to work. Is I'm leveraging Velixo and generic inquiries to allow my basically my OData feeds to use smart updating, so that to decrease the time it takes to load OData. I'm using SQL engine. Oh,
sorry, I've
jumped the gun.
Moving the mouse over it, and I accidentally clicked it. Sorry. Go ahead.
It's like we're at the Oscars or something. He's trying to play the music. It's like, okay, it's Ryan, we're at time.
Sorry, keep going.
So yeah, so using that Velixo engine to do smart refreshes, because we've seen OData take some time to load, but by doing smart refreshes with last modified dates, I think we're able to improve that performance. So it's something we're just started kind of experimenting with this week.
And Ryan, that reminds me, that's another hashtag AcumaticaTnT post that I've had on my mind, is writing up something to show you how to put that last modified date in the OData URL, so you could use regular Power Pivot for that. I haven't tried it to see if it even works, but in theory, it should work. Yeah.
Ooh. All right. Well, we will look for that. We will look for that one.
Breakthrough.
The good segue that will lead us to is that in 2 weeks, we are dedicating an entire augforums.com/live event for tips and tricks. So it'll be all the things that Tim and I have found on the internet for AcumaticaTnT, kind of going over those for everybody. So what is it like was it like Talk Soup? Was that like one of those shows that was where he would just kind of go on like stupid videos or something? I think it was something like that. They'll kind of be like us, except for like tips and tricks. We'll kind of go through, scour the internet for the best or funniest tips out there, I guess.
And Ryan, we got to get it on the calendar, but we do want to broadcast live from Summit, right? We just got to figure out a day and time, but heads up there.
Yeah, we'll be doing some recordings, some live events from Summit. I'll be there Saturday through Tuesday for I got the hackathon on the weekend, all the events. Kind of threatening to do a live broadcast from the parties. So kind of we'll bring the dance party to everybody.
We'll do it. Good.
I won't be there. Arlene, you won't be there either, right? Laura, are you going to be there?
I'll be there. Yeah,
you will be there. Okay. Yeah. We got 2 and 2 here.
So Laura and I can be at the party hosting it up. I'll have two Bluetooth mics connected, so we can grab people and chat with them. So we'll see if we can do that until they kick us out or something. right, audience, thank you guys very much. Please continue to join us on our live events. We have a ton of fun trying to kind of bring in the audience and a cool panel with us. So thank you, Laura. Thank you, Arlene. The best producer in the business, Mr. Tim Rodman. Thank you again for this. And guys, we will see you again in 2 weeks. Bye, guys.
Good. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.